This episode of the RealAg Radio podcast is brought to you by the BC Centre for Agritech Innovation at Simon Fraser University. Are you ready to grow your farm business with cutting-edge technologies and innovative solutions? Our centre will drive you towards an advanced future. Get the investment, expertise, and support you need to test and develop your products or ideas through our Agritech Development Program. Google SFU Agritech Innovation to learn more.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Friday edition of the show. It is the last show of 2023. Thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also a big shout out as well to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. Before we get into today's show, I want to remind you that next week we will have kind of a best of the Farmer Rapid Fire, all of our latest from the past 5-6 weeks, the Farmer Rapid Fire episodes brought to you by, of course, Pioneer Seeds Canada. Big thanks to them for being the exclusive sponsor of the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we're going to get the farmers on the show. It'll be all farmers all week next week. So while you're doing some of that, because kind of that slow, kind of relaxing time in between Christmas and New Year's, you'll be able to hear what's happening across the country from the farmers' mouth themselves. Today on the show, we got a RealAg Issues Panel, and we're going to dig in on a whole bunch of stuff. You know, things are really kind of shutting down here for Christmas, but the news cycle did not slow down whatsoever. We got to talk about the weather. We got to talk about some big M&A activity in the implement business and in the machinery business. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the immigration issues at the southern border in the U.S., as well as some really staggering immigration numbers when it comes to Canada. We're also going to talk a little bit about some of these 2035 EV mandates the government rolled out here this week. So we've got a whole bunch to talk about. As well, with the panel, we're also going to discuss, hey, what do you think will be the big story? What are you watching out for in 2024? If you have any feedback on today's show, you can definitely send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, X, Instagram, YouTube, Threads, TikTok. We're in basically all of them. We are Real Agriculture there, and please check out all those feeds. Make sure if you're on our YouTube channel, you subscribe to that YouTube channel. Remember, while you are on YouTube, yesterday we released a brand new episode of RealAg Shops. It is a cool one. It's one from Manitoba, and Kelvin Heppner filmed it. It's a really, really cool shop. Encourage you to check it out, and you can find that at our YouTube channel. Indeed. It is, it's like well over 1,500 views now, I think, under 24 hours. And of course, RealAg Shops is brought to you by Princess Auto. The other way that you can get get a hold of us, I should say, is call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Okay. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we're going to bring the panel in. We got Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith of RealAgriculture, as well as Andrew Campbell of Fresh Air Media, utensil.ca, also host of the Made to Grow podcast, sponsored by Pioneer. Him and Lyndsey and Kelvin will be here, and we'll get to that right after this quick break.
FP Genetics relentlessly brings innovative new seed genetics to Canadian farms, ensuring growers, breeders, and farmers are supported and viable. Being a valued partner on your farm for decades, you can expect the continuous pursuit of the best genetics. Visit fpgenetics.ca to discover FP's strong portfolio of wheat, durum, barley, oats, peas, and rye, or contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
And welcome to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. Okay, let's dig in with RealAg Issues Panel here today. But first I want to mention FP Genetics, strong supporter of RealAg Radio. Innovative seed genetics for Canadian farmers. Contact your local FP seed dealer or territory manager to discuss your certified seed strategy specific to your region. Visit fpgenetics.ca to find out more. Let's bring in the panel and get to it. Lots of issues to chat about. Up first, it is Andrew Campbell. He's a dairy farmer from Strathroy, Ontario. Also with Fresh Air Media, utensil.ca, and like he's got a lot of titles. Also host of the Made to Grow podcast, sponsored by Pioneer. And Andrew, you can get that podcast wherever you get your podcasts. So welcome, buddy. Good to have you back.
It's wonderful to be back, Shaun. Thanks for the invite.
I was reminded that this is a little bit of a tradition. This wasn't even an intentional, but now it's a tradition because Lyndsey pointed out that you were on the year-end show last year too.
Well, you know what? She checked the archives, so I'll trust her that I was there. And yeah, it's fun to be able to kind of recap what the year looks like going into the holidays.
And look ahead a little bit as well. Also joining us is Kelvin Heppner, coming out of Altona, Manitoba. Kelvin, how are you?
Doing well. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. You got some snow on the ground? We
do, yeah. It's not enough to go snowmobiling or anything like that, but I think it's enough to qualify as a white Christmas at this point. But there are some above freezing temperatures in the forecast in the next couple of days here too, so we'll see if it sticks around. But right now, it's at least in the yard, it's white. The fields are pretty bare, but the yard has some snow in it.
We don't even have snow in the ditches. Like I took a photo yesterday driving up Interstate 15, and yeah, it's just brown, baby. It's not even brown snow that's blown into the ditch. It's just nothing. Also joining us is Lyndsey Smith, coming out of Ottawa, Ontario, where it does actually rain. Lyndsey, how are you?
It does rain. I'm doing well. And it snowed. So we are having a white Christmas. But like Kelvin, we've got a warm up coming over the weekend. I think they're calling for a high of like +5 on Christmas Day. But that's okay because we've got enough snow and it looked pretty this morning. That's good enough. I did want to point out a few things. For those watching on YouTube, you'll have already noticed that Kelvin and Andrew and I are in our red and green garb, and the host is not. So I'm just going to... You Grinch.
Black is not a Christmas color?
It is not. No.
I'm wearing the color of Santa's boots.
Yeah, there you go. Or coal in your stocking. There you go. So you missed that memo, I guess.
Yes, I did. I did indeed. Yeah. Okay, let's jump in here. Start off. Boy, we had some merger and acquisition activity going on this week. Kelvin, we got the sale of Bourgault Industries, and we also got the sale of Buhler, which you've been following very closely. Give us the update.
Yeah, we were just headed out the door on, what was that, Wednesday afternoon to one of our daughters' Christmas, or two of our daughters' Christmas program at school, and sure enough, major Canadian ag manufacturer news, a pair of stories, both within a couple hours of each other on Wednesday afternoon. Linamar, which is mainly an automotive manufacturing business based in Southern Ontario. They are also the owners of Salford and MacDon, announced that they are acquiring Bourgault Industries, the seeding equipment manufacturer based in Saskatchewan. What was the deal? $640 million, I believe, was the price tag on that one. And they're expecting it to close early in the new year. And then a few minutes later, or just that same afternoon, it was announced the deal that we've talked about or kind of been anticipating here for a few weeks. Buhler Industries, which over the last, going back to 2007, has been majority owned by Rosselmash, the largest Russian ag equipment manufacturer. They've been looking for a new long-term investor since, at least publicly, since back in summer. And it was announced that a company out of Turkey, I believe it's pronounced Bashak Tractors, is buying Buhler Industries. That's the parent company of Versatile and Farm King Equipment. So Versatile Tractors There's a deal in place now to have this this Turkish company become the new owners, taking over from the Russians in owning Buhler. That deal is also expected to close potentially before the end of the year, and if not, early in 2024.
So I wonder what happens with some of the IP between Versatile Tractor and Rostelmash.
That's a good question. I know that some of this deal, it's a $65 million price tag, and Buhler was carrying some debt and also owed some money to Rostelmash. And so I believe I don't have the breakdown right in front of me. I should have pulled it up before this, but I believe it's around $27 million was attributed to going to shareholders, another few $1 million for transaction costs, and then the rest was attributed to debt and costs related to intellectual property owed to Rostelmash. It just so happens that Rostelmash is opening a new tractor factory in Rostov-on-Don, which is near the Ukraine-Russia border. They're opening that, or they were planning to open that factory, a large tractor making factory in Russia here in the fourth quarter of 2023. So that timing may just be coincidental. I'm not sure, but certainly with the war ongoing situation there, this is a lot of what's driving this behind the scenes is probably the separation kind of between the West and Russia, and investment becoming harder to get financing and all those types of things, the complications of the war and what we're seeing on the geopolitical side of things.
Lyndsey, I'm really wondering if we're not going to see more of these kinds of deals for different reasons. If we do sort of see a bit of a slowdown in the equipment space, also, some companies looking, for the opportunity to grow through scale, like if usually these things, there's a couple of them, they sort of snowball, and there's more out there.
It does sort of seem like it is, almost contagious, right? Or it's like one domino falls and then a whole bunch more. And of course, usually these things don't happen quickly. So obviously there's things going on in the background that maybe we just didn't catch wind of, but, potentially we could see more of these things. I think it's interesting. So both of these deals kind of interesting. I think this is very in line, is it Linamar? Is that how you say it? Linamar? Okay.
Linamar, I believe.
Linamar. Okay. So, but this is sort of in their wheelhouse, right? This is a company that likes to pick up, solid companies that produce something that people want, that has a good brand behind them. And they do run them as separate entities for the most part. So they keep those brands, they keep that name recognition. So, pretty on brand on that side. On the Turkish side, I find interesting. So I immediately Googled, thanks Google, who this company is. Did anyone else do this and see what their tractors look like? Okay, so I'm going to say, Kelvin, or we can say 3, 2, 1, Massey Ferguson. They basically look like a knockoff Massey.
I don't think they have any tractors in the same range as what Versatile made.
Yeah, exactly.
20 horsepower max, maybe something like that.
We've seen them at Agritechnica.
Yeah. So these are strategic for sure. Obviously, for the Bourgault purchase, and Andrew, that's how you say it, Bourgault. And I say that because many of my Ontario friends don't know how to say it. So that's how you say it, out of St. Bruce, Saskatchewan. And this does sort of round out the product offering for this company. So I think it's a really smart move. That one, I think, though, caught a lot of people off guard. There was a lot of surprised people that Bourgault was sold. So.
Yeah. Somebody had sent me a text and said, largest exit for any company started in St. Bruce, Saskatchewan, indeed.
St. Bruce. That is a very narrow category,
yes.
but yes, it is true. St. Bruce is not exactly a big town. Yeah. But no, I think it caught a lot of people off guard. So we'll see. I don't know what other rumblings are out there, but
what a success story. Really.
Yeah, exactly. It's
really cool. Both were sold for different reasons, but Bourgault has really set the standard when it comes to some of that mid-row banding, well built. It is very much a huge success story for sure. Andrew, curious, what are your thoughts in regards to what you think we'll see in 2024? Do you think we're going to see a whole bunch of more M&A activity when it comes to things like OEMs?
Yeah, I do, because I think what you're seeing, and the example of this Turkish company buying Buhler is a good example of, I think companies are recognizing that they need a full portfolio of equipment if they're going to compete with the big guys. And so to be able to kind of say, okay, what are we missing in our portfolio, I think fits really well. I actually, when you talk about like the versatile brand, my bingo card would have had Kubota picking it up because I thought that was like a big piece of equipment that was missing out of their portfolio as they try to expand, pretty rapidly. And then Linamar, like I'm fascinated to watch Linamar because being in Southern Ontario, like it is, more of the Guelph area to our area, but it is it is the heartbeat of that area in terms of like automotive manufacturing, and to see them continue to grow in the agriculture space, I think actually makes it pretty exciting that here you've got a Canadian company that does want to invest and does want to grow an agriculture business. So I think, kind of the combination of that is, to go back to your question is, are we going to see more? I think we have to, if these little guys intend to compete with the big guys.
Yeah, and I think if we do see some of those rate cuts in 2024, whether it's 3 or 4 in the U.S. and Canada, that also I think accelerates. Capital comes back into the market. It's really risk on, and people proceed to look for ways to grow through acquisition. Okay. We have to take a break. We've got a whole bunch more topics to talk about, especially a couple bridges closing, railway bridges on the U.S.-Mexico border, and how that is a real problem for not only the export of U.S. ag commodities, but also Canadian ones. We'll talk about that. A new story up at RealAgriculture.com. When we come back, you're listening to RealAg Radio. It's the RealAg Issues Panel. Lyndsey Smith, Kelvin Heppner, Andrew Campbell, and we will be right back.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
As you look ahead to the next growing season, there's a lot to consider when it comes to your crop. You need every possible advantage available to you. The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com has everything you need to make the best choice for you and your farm. On-demand videos with leading industry experts, available anywhere, anytime. Go into the season confident and ready with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the RealAg Issues Panel. This segment's brought to you by Farmer's Edge. Nutrient efficiency is rooted in your soil. Harness those nutrients with fertility services from Farmer's Edge, giving you access to our cutting-edge soil testing laboratory for highly accurate and timely analysis of your fields. Find out more by going to farmersedge.ca/laboratory. Okay, let's dig in here. Lyndsey, new story up at realagriculture.com. We got real issues with, now this has to do with a large number, surges, as they've been called, of people trying to cross the border from Mexico into the U.S. illegally. It's got 2 bridges, Union Pacific related, closed, and it is creating real hardship for exporters. Talk about what you found out over the last couple of days.
Yeah, so the last few days, there's a few different logistics stories that are sort of all converging, but the specific one, of course, is for Canadian listeners, if you've missed it, the U.S. government closed, it is the Eagles Pass and the El Paso bridges, which are very important freight routes for, yes, UM Pacific, but I think there's BNSF something like, it's BNSF as well. And I was going to see if I could find the number on how much actually travels to those 2. We did hear from the soy transportation Soy Transportation Coalition, they are watching this very closely because just soybeans alone from the U.S. into Mexico, which largely go through these two trade corridors, 4.62 billion U.S., and that's beans, meal, and oil. And almost all of it goes on those two freight lines, on those two bridges that are closed. These bridges are closed to stop freight traffic, to stop exactly that, this of Mexicans coming into the U.S. illegally. But the commodity side and shippers are saying it's not a smart move. You're shutting down commerce, trying to deal with, yes, a very serious issue, but you're essentially hamstringing a huge part of shipping going into Mexico. There has to be some other way than just these two routes. So it's a massive issue. And realistically, all right, does Canada send a lot to Mexico as far as soybeans? No, but we send canola. We send, several other commodities also down this way. And this is a major north-south route. Now, related to this, we also heard that, and we've been watching, of course, as the Mississippi River system has had low water levels plaguing it the last few years. So that has slowed north-south traffic. And then we're also hearing that the Panama Canal is also dealing with low water levels, so reduced traffic through there as well. So just if we look north-south, there are some political issues causing concern, but there's also some environmental impacts that are causing concern as well. And while it may have the biggest impact on the U.S., it certainly will trickle down to Canada, or up, I guess, if you will.
Well put. And I said on Agri Talk this morning, this is a clear outcome of Congress, the Senate, the White House not willing to deal with this issue of the southern border. They can't find a solution. Both parties fundraise based on this issue, and now it's having a great impact on commerce, like you said. Andrew, it's funny how, we during the pandemic, it was all about logistics and some of the challenges. But boy, this week alone, as Lyndsey just talked about, I think we're going to be talking a lot about logistics and shipping things around the world here in the first part of 24.
Well, and here's three things that I wouldn't have had on my list of things to worry about necessarily. You usually have the foresight of a labor disruption. There's going to be a strike at, on the edge of an ocean, whatever. You're going to have those types of situations where you think, okay, we need a strategy to figure out and get around it. When all of a sudden, just kind of, rail lines get closed or canals get closed or whatever it is, it kind of brings to light the issue of what's our backup plan in all of these situations? Do we have something where we can, okay, maybe it's not going to be as efficient as running it down that rail line, but where's that capacity to be able to put it on a boat, and get it somewhere else? Because that's really going to be the biggest challenge, is there just is not the room to be able to just hold on and wait some of these situations out. I think what we need to do is we need to do a better job moving forward of saying, what is our backup plan so that we can continue to move product? Maybe it's to Mexico, maybe it's somewhere else. To me, it doesn't necessarily matter. But where's the backup plan so that at the end of the day, the product gets moving and bins are empty come the next time we're actually going to harvest?
Andrew just mentioned strike. Kelvin, we've got threat of a possible strike at Viterra in January.
Viterra employees in Saskatchewan who are members of the Grain Services Union. So this is field employees at elevators and also at the head office in Regina. They have voted in favor of authorizing strike action, and they have rejected the final offer from Viterra as of those results were announced earlier this week, or maybe it was last Friday, a week ago now. So they are planning to meet again potentially by January 2nd, if not earlier, and decide then whether they will take strike action depending on whether they see progress in the negotiations at the bargaining table. So, yeah, there could be a bit of a disruption. I just wanted to point out one other logistical issue that we haven't touched on here yet is what's happening, of course, in the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. And that might not have as much of a direct impact on grain shipments around the world. Somewhat it will, but I think a bigger impact is just on ocean freight rates and what we're going to see there in terms of costs of ships, as all these ships are having to be rerouted around Africa. And that together with the Panama Canal, it's a lot of broader economic impact in terms of the ocean freight market. So something to pay attention to as we continue to talk about inflation and logistics and all these types of things.
What are you thinking about? Do you think the rate cuts are going to happen, like the Bank of Canada and the Fed are talking about, like possibility in 24 of free?
You want to get right into this?
Yeah. Sean is on the Sean is on the muscle.
You brought it up.
I think that it will be tougher. So there's going to be huge political pressure to pivot and for central banks to start making cuts in the new year. But I think that there are a whole bunch of inflationary factors still at play in the market, including all of these logistics stories. Mm-hmm. And it's, in some ways, this is deja vu back to COVID time in terms of all these things happening. There's also all the governments around the world, including especially here in Canada, continue to push environmental measures, climate change measures that whether you're for or against are inflationary by nature. And so those things haven't gone away in terms of having our carbon tax or this EV mandate that if we want to rip through another issue here, that the EV mandate announced this week, that's an inflationary measure. And so there's just a lot of things happening that I think are still. Wage growth is increasing on the food price side of things. We haven't seen much relief there. And so to me, there's still a lot of things that central banks are still going to have to try to counter here. So I'm more on the side that they're going to take longer to make cuts than what maybe most people are expecting.
You're taking the under.
Yeah.
Oh, Kelvin. So, but to follow up on that, so in the story about the Mexico-U.S. border, I did mention the Suez Canal as well. So 12% of consumer goods of global trade in the world go through the Suez Canal. So the shipping lanes that are typically going through the Suez Canal are going around Africa, which is going to add a significant amount of time, obviously, which adds cost. And that, of course, just makes things worse. Backs things up further and further and further, which yes, we saw during the pandemic as well. So it is while it may not be as significant to grain trade per se, just products in general it is. And all of these shipping routes are connected in some way. And we know that it takes time for things to push and pull from other places. So while it's maybe not immediately impacting grain trade, it certainly is going to impact even just the overall cost of goods, like Calvin's point of inflationary pressure for sure.
So Lyndsey, the reason for the two bridges closing is because
political.
but they've moved agents from those bridge crossings to where the surges are happening, correct?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of it's reported that a lot of migrants were moving with freight trains. So there was a lot. So they're trying also to stop freight train travel because they don't necessarily have the people power to be vetting these trains coming through either. So there's a few things. It is very much a cost issue, really. If you think about it, it's a people issue from the perspective of the government trying to find these migrants and stop them from coming in. But it's twofold. It's the people being moved to other border crossings, but also they're trying to reduce the amount of trains going through because migrants are moving with the trains.
The Wall Street Journal says they're arresting 7,000 people a day.
If that's true, that blows my mind.
7,000.
Where do they go?
Where do you put them? How do you take care of them? How do you, right?
But this is the big issue here is that nobody knows what the heck to do. It's like anybody that has solutions, and even if they are like soft and minor in nature, are depending on who they're coming from, are immediately labeled as inhumane.
Right.
And so it just continues to go on. Like it's just a lack of leadership to not want to actually fix the situation. It's really, really, it's just wrong. I sympathize. I couldn't imagine being a rancher outside of El Paso. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that they would deal with, and there's safety issues. There's it's a horrible situation. It's not easy to fix clearly, but you have to have some political will to want to do it. Mm-hmm. And right now, it's the political will is like it's in the abyss. It's not exactly anywhere to be found. Let's take a break. Go ahead. Go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
No, I'm curious because is it an actual political will issue? Is they're just not the will to work with anybody on it? Like I'm right, you're wrong. We're not going to do anything until you come to my side. Like the way I look at this is a lot more in the case of assuming that this way is the only way that will solve this problem doesn't get anybody else to the table to actually have a real discussion. Like, I think one of the challenges on an issue like this, and this isn't just this issue, this is a whole whack of political issues, is we assume the other person is an idiot and doesn't know what they're talking about. And therefore, we never actually come to an agreement. And until somebody actually comes to an agreement on an issue like this and is actually willing to move a little bit to the middle, this problem is not going away.
Well, look at the funding for Ukraine. There's clearly a desire from the Democrat side of the aisle to provide further support to help Ukraine out. Republicans, including the Speaker of the House, has said, okay, definitely open to that. But this bill, this is going to include funding for the southern border. They can't do it.
Right.
Can't do it.
But the thing is here is that ultimately a lot of these things come down to dollars. But you're spending the dollars one way or the other, right? So like for this example, the U.S. is missing out on dollars for its industries because we can't move product north and south. And they're still you still have to deal with the people coming across the border. So like it costs regardless. So if you're going to put resources into these things, or if you're going to support Ukraine, or if you're going to it really, and I mean, Canada is no different when we get polarized on something, but realistically, to Andrew's point, at some point you have to sit down and actually meet in the middle and figure out that, well, it might not be exactly what you want. We have to move forward on some of these projects. And honestly, the issue with the Mexican border, A, is not new, and B, is not simple, but you can't just close down trade because you don't know how to stop migrants coming north.
Well, and maybe there's a reason for it, but where the heck are the increased agents? This isn't like an issue that just sprung up last week, and it's like, oh my goodness, these surges and the caravans. This is not a new topic, and so this is the time where these things happen because it can't happen in the summer because of how hot it is. It's a lot cooler in the desert in those parts at this time. So where are the agents? Why do we not have enough agents? And that's once again lack of leadership to probably have the funding to be able to recruit the agents. Okay, we got to take a break. We've got more issues coming up here. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Hey, welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Friday. It's the last show of 2023. We appreciate you being in the audience with us here throughout the year and look forward to 2024. Andrew Campbell from Fresh Air Media, also host of the Made to Grow podcast, and you can pick that up wherever you get your podcasts, as well as Lyndsey Smith and Kelvin Heppner of RealAgriculture. This segment's brought to you by the great people at MNP. Seeking professional advice for your farm and business, MNP's team of agriculture specialists cover it all, from business planning and tax guidance to financial projections, farm succession, and risk management. Visit MNP.ca to connect with the experts today. Andrew, how is the rural broadband in your area?
Well, I come to you live through Elon Musk's network. Starlink is what I use because, honestly, like broadband, it's coming. I'm not going to say that they're not working their way through. And in my view, anything less than fiber optic now doesn't count. Is the standard that I think has to be set for not just today but for what's going to be needed in the future. And certainly, there's investment through Ontario. We're probably 5 miles from the closest kind of hookup to a fiber fiber optic network, and it'll come. I have full confidence it'll come in the next number of years. But honestly, it's just not fast enough. There needs to be more investment because I think it's one of those areas that particularly as we try to find housing for people, both people coming into Canada and people who have been here for a while, there's space in rural communities. There can be developments in kind of small towns across the country, but if the network isn't there for them to work from home or work from home occasionally, then a small town just can't attract them in the first place. So I think there's a lot of reasons that investment needs to move and move a lot faster than it is.
And this week, Kelvin, we had some news that, Andrew brought up Starlink. It is one of the low Earth orbit satellite providers using that kind of technology, but we're going to have some new cell phone service based on that technology.
Yeah, I'm actually on Starlink here as well, and looking forward to this new development here. And it looks like it's kind of on the horizon as SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, received permission from the FCC in the U.S. last week to trial its low Earth orbit satellite to smartphone plans, and so they're looking to deliver cell phone service to areas that don't have cell phone service. So whether that's a remote field or pasture or an scene of an emergency where cell towers are knocked out. This is also happening in Canada. Rogers has a deal with SpaceX as well, and they're also. It was last week, I believe, that New Brunswick's Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey made the first call on Rogers' satellite to smartphone network, and so this is unlike satellite phones in the past that hikers use or people hiking in the backwoods kind of use those satellite phones. This would work between low Earth orbit satellite and a regular smartphone that everybody has, and so this potentially could mean the end of cell service dead zones in a lot of North America. So I think that's pretty exciting and something that could potentially be just as revolutionary as Starlink has been to many rural areas with poor broadband coverage or connectivity in general.
Well, it always amazes me, Lyndsey, how crappy cell phone service can be so close to major urban areas.
Including mine.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I don't know. I've been in several different provinces in several different rural areas, and I can't say that any province really does well in this department. And I'm always surprised, whether it's Ontario or Saskatchewan, just how close you can be to a major center and still have a dead zone. So this also, I think, yes, I would agree with Andrew that, we still are struggling to bring true high speed to all Canadians, which was a promise. But even here I am in Ottawa city limits, and I just barely have managed to up things to where it would be considered high speed. That was very recent. But the flip side is this potentially opens up some of the big drawbacks to adopting technology on farms in some areas, in that we could really see true connectivity anywhere, which would really change the game for a lot of people in fully adopting things like cloud-based record keeping, or, straight from the tractor to the cloud. Like, these are the sorts of things that, it's not just a learning process of how to use these products or what we're going to do with them. It almost always comes down to, well, can they stay on track? Can they stay connected? What do we have to put up? What do we have to invest in to make it all work? So this could potentially be a really huge leap forward in fully connecting things out in the field too, which is pretty cool.
I think it was the movie. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to start, these companies are only planning on offering text message plans and maybe 911 service. Audio and actual data service is still, it sounds like 2 or 3 years away. So it won't immediately, kind of just like Starlink is an upgrade over what the other options are, but it's still not quite the quality of fiber optic. It looks like this cell service via satellite might kind of be kind of secondary level service to actual tower 5G or 6G or whatever they're till in cities now. But it'll definitely be an upgrade versus not having any connectivity. Although maybe if you're on vacation or looking to get away from society, maybe this isn't such good news. You're gonna have to find other excuses to not check your email.
Sorry, Cabot. Holidays.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the old satellite phones. It reminds me kind of the old the bag phone you had in the truck initially, where you Put the big antenna on top of the truck,
but that required specialized equipment, and those were expensive satellites, and it was expensive to use all of that. Not accessible like a smartphone is with such a high adoption, of course.
Not dependable too. Remember in The Lone Survivor, the movie, when he was all by himself? He had the satellite phone, and they were having troubles with it.
I love that we're going to go to movies as facts. I really like that.
Hey, I read the book. I have read that book, and I've seen him speak.
Oh, well then, it's obviously true. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get back to immigration, because that's a fun topic. Now, the U.S. doesn't have all the issues and challenges when we're talking about some of the numbers. Kelvin, you've got a staggering stat for us to discuss about Canada.
Yeah, Stats Canada released its quarterly population estimates on Tuesday, putting the Canadian total population now at about 40.5 million, with record growth over the first 9 months of this year. We've already, in the first 9 months of 2023, Canada's already set an annual record higher than any other full year in Canadian history in terms of the number of new people in this country. And if you do the math, there's just over 1 million Canadians million people have come to Canada in 2023. And if you divide that by the total population, we're at about 2.5% of the people in Canada as of October 1st. That number grew by about 2.5% from January 1st to October 1st. And that is just staggering and obviously explains a lot of the issues that people are feeling when it comes to housing prices and inflation in the housing market and healthcare access and all the issues that government is dealing with right now.
Yeah, and no, kid, hold on here, but we don't know if all those people are trying to stay permanently or they're just here temporarily and then going back home.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of unanswered questions.
It's the net change in people. So our actual number of people coming to Canada may be higher if people are leaving, but that's the net. The net change is where's the exact number here? I have it on the StatsCan website here. It's just over 1 million people versus 40.5 million is our total number now, is the bottom number of that equation.
Yet, with all of that net increase, Andrew, I still hear from farmers all the time, still having a hard time trying to find people to work. So it's not necessarily helping.
No, it's not. If the objective was to simply get people and, get them working in the jobs that need them the most, it's not. But it's one of those situations of what have we done to bring and attract them to, particularly the areas of the country that are having the labor shortage. Like when we talk about, kind of farms that do need that help, it's what are we doing to make sure they, one, have access to actually get to a rural community, that they think that this town exists in the first place, that they have access to a vehicle. They may not have a driver's license. They may not have access to anything like that. You've got the issue of, what's the homes like? What's the schools like? Are the hospitals there? Like all of these things kind of compound, but at the core of it really is, do they even know these things exist? And clearly they don't if they're, if they're waiting in particular urban centers with no options in front of them. And to me, like, I think a little bit about, what would it be like to do that? Like, what kind of despair are you coming from where you are going to come to a new country where you may not know anybody, you may not have any of the, kind of requirements needed in terms of license or anything, and then, move into a hotel room and maybe move in there for a year or more, to be able to do that. Like, I can't imagine this idea that here we want people to come to Canada, have this new vision and this new hope and all of that for what life in Canada might be like. And this is the way we're treating them.
Good point.
From an agriculture perspective, though, I worry that there's going to be backlash to this because of all the social issues this is causing, and that government clampdown on immigration, is it going to restrict our supply of labor in much needed high demand areas with huge vacancies, such as our processing facilities that rely on many new Canadians to work in, because many Canadians don't want to work in some of these facilities. There's a lot of situations like that where I wonder whether our food system, whether government is going to make exceptions for it, or whether we'll be caught in the prop wash here in terms of clamping down on people coming into Canada, trying to reduce this demand and burden on housing and all these other things.
Lyndsey,
so I want to jump in. There are, and this is something that I think does happen in other communities as well, but would love to see more of it. So just just a 45-minute drive from me, we've got, there is a group, and I think it's affiliated with the Lanark County. There's a group actually of farmers who have been trying to work with our social infrastructure to essentially stay connected to new Canadians coming in, or people that are looking to move to Canada, and trying to stay in contact so that they can potentially offer jobs or living arrangements or whatever. And they're being proactive about it, which I think is fantastic, but there's still a lot of red tape and a lot of hurdles to that. And realistically, that is, a particular community reaching out to say, like, look, we're here and how can we help? But that has to happen everywhere in order to actually, get some of these people moving out to where, they want to be. And frankly, it's an incredibly complex and fragmented system. And so I'd love to see more of it, but it also doesn't make it a slam dunk either, because I know that it's not necessarily, the system isn't necessarily set up for that either. But,
well, and typical federal government, like, we're going to put a number on the board when we're going to lose control of that number and not spend enough time and enough tact to figure out actually how do we make this work so it goes smoothly. We got them in, we got all the people here, and then it's like, then they're forgotten in many cases. And that to me is just insane. But Andrew, finish up here. Because
I think, if the number is 2.5% in 9 months, which is astounding to me, that's a big percentage when we're talking about new Canadians, and just population. Have we seen 2.5% increase in hospital beds, 2.5% increase in schools, 2.5% increase in, kind of investment in all of these things, all of these services that we require? Of course we have not. So it's one of those things that we talk a lot about, just where are they going to work and where are they going to live?
Yep.
But I think what we're setting ourselves up for is a real crisis in terms of services
I'll tell you,
every Canadian.
Because here's the easy answer. They're going to say, well, hey, those are all provincial jurisdiction. But it's the provinces have to fix that. We did our part. It's the provinces.
Work together.
Exactly.
Just quickly, StatsCan this morning out with new GDP numbers. GDP in October unchanged. So our population is growing by 2.5%, and our GDP is unchanged. What does that say about GDP per capita, which is used as a proxy for standard of living?
Canada, we have a productivity problem. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what we should look out for in 2024. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147. I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. Bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of Real Agriculture.
Whether you're a rookie soybean grower or a seasoned vet, the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com has exactly what you need to stay in the game. The latest research and the best agronomic advice from industry experts, along with local and global market coverage on demand, anywhere, anytime. Make this growing season your best growing season with the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on the RealAg Issues Panel, last show of 2023. This segment's brought to you by Oxbow Cereal Broadleaf Herbicide from New Farm. You can find out more by going to newfarm.ca. Oxbow is a workhorse, absolutely, on resistant kochia. I hate kochia, never mind resistant kochia, and other tough weeds in your wheat and barley. Like I said, go to newfarm.ca. Okay, this is it. Last segment of the year. This is where we do our sort of like we're thinking ahead, crystal ball sort of stuff. Kelvin, what do you think we need to be watching out for, or will be the big story of 2024?
I don't want to pick the easy, most obvious pick here, but to me, there's not there. I don't know if there'd be anything that would be bigger than November 5th, 2024, the day of the U.S. presidential election, as it's going to affect many aspects of our world, from the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine to politics here in Canada to social fabric of North America and even the world in terms of geopolitical issues and trends that we're seeing globally. A lot of that will be determined in the coming months, leading up to November 5th. So I think will be the story of the next year, of course.
Quickly, do you think who's in worse shape right now, Trudeau or Biden? Politically, not physically, like politically.
Good question.
Didn't want to confuse you there for a second.
Oh boy, I don't know. It's tough. I think the polls in the U.S. after the Trump surprise years ago are maybe, I don't know. It's tough to trust the polls, especially in the U.S. I'd say. So I think. I don't know. This is a tough question. I think Trudeau. I'll pick Trudeau.
Okay, you're taking Trudeau. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you out. I was going to let you out of that one.
The polls in the U.S. I feel like the pendulum has maybe swung to the other side where they're trying to make sure that they get the Trump supporters in those polls because they missed them so badly and were embarrassed by that. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's tough to say.
Jim Wiesmeyer always has this thing where he's like, "Hey, have any of you ever been called by a pollster to his audiences?" And nobody ever puts their hand up.
Yeah.
Lyndsey, what do you think is the story?
I was going to say both cases, for the good of their country, they should step down.
Yes.
There you go. Okay,
Amen,
Lyndsey.
Go ahead. Okay, so continuing with Calvin's very serious theme, it'll be Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift either get married or have a baby.
Okay, Kelvin. Let's go back.
No, actually, I would say interest rates. So interest rates dropping finally by end of 2024. That's going to be the big story.
Once, twice, 3 times?
Wouldn't that be great? I just said dropping. I'm not going to go any further than that.
Okay. Andrew, what do you think the big story will be?
Well, I was kind of thinking interest rates too, but really, I don't think they'll drop enough to have this enormous impact. I think we got too many other costs to worry about on the inflation side. Kelvin mentioned the U.S. election. I think leading up to that is a big thing. I think just the global pressure of all these geopolitical issues is really going to be, what's the situation, in Gaza and Israel look like? What's the Russia and Ukraine situation look like? What does obviously the U.S. election look like? I think by the time you start piecing together all of the options, nothing comes out at the end of 2024 and says, phew, dodged a bullet on that one, everybody. I think we have a lot of crises that are going to need to be solved in that geopolitical landscape. And then I think what the impact we then have is just so much instability when it comes to commodity pricing, when it comes to, what do interest rates look like when it comes to logistics, all of those things, I think create some enormous challenges that leave me really guessing what does the end of 2024 look like for us.
Shaun, how about you?
Yeah,
I was going to say weather. I think if we're talking about Matt Makins from Makins Weather earlier this week, you look at pretty much the entire western half of the United States again, and the Western Canadian prairies. The wheat belt is really in a real bad position, along with a number of other crops that are grown through those regions. And what happens from a water perspective? I think there is a lot of pressure on Mother Nature come springtime here, and it's warm. It's going to be a warm winter, and he pretty much said that, which is fine, whatever. But spring. Better. Bring some moisture for a large, vast area of North America for sure. So, yeah, those are all good. Like, I'm not going to disagree with anything that anybody said. And to Andrew's point, I think too, another thing that comes to mind is what is Canada's role in all this? Because I think a lot of people are starting to question that in terms of like, where do we fit in trying to be a part of a solution? It's definitely not military wise. I was at Great Falls Airport yesterday in Montana. I think there's more planes parked in the graveyard beside the airport than we have in our entire fleet, right? So that's a whole nother soapbox that probably don't need to get on. Hey, need to say Merry Christmas to everybody here on the panel. Need to say Merry Christmas as well to everybody out there in the audience. We do appreciate your listenership and tuning into the show here every weekday throughout the year, including especially here on these Fridays. This is definitely one of the highlights of the week here for all of us. So really, really, I do appreciate it. Everybody have a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. So panel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Merry
Christmas, everybody.
If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. We got into some heavy topics today. For the last show of the year, we didn't exactly keep it light around here. That's okay. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. And we'll, of course, chat again next week. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of the RealAg Radio podcast, brought to you by the BC Centre for Agritech Innovation at Simon Fraser University, your go-to for advancing agritech. Ready to elevate your farm business? Achieve the productivity and profitability you're looking for with Agritech Development Program. Google SFU Agritech Innovation to learn more.